My name is Bill Thies from Microsoft Research in India, and I'll tell you about CGnet Swara, which is a voice portal for citizen news journalism in rural areas. And this continues the conversation around reaching populations that are out of reach of the internet, low income, often disenfranchised in developing countries. And I think what's interesting is if you look at this population, the question that's most pertinent for them is not necessarily open access to what the government has been doing, but transparency with respect to what the government does not do. So how do you have transparency about kind of shortcomings, absences of action on behalf of the government? And for that, I think it's useful to actually turn the attention and the role to the citizens, and what role can they play in highlighting those issues and bringing more accountability. This is joint work with many colleagues. I'd like to take you to the context of this work is in Chhattisgarh, India. It's a state in central India, which is one of the most poor and disenfranchised in the whole country. You have a population which is 80% rural. Internet penetration is around 1% in these areas. And it also has a lot of political tension. So it's kind of the heartland of what's been called the Maoist Naxalite insurgency. This is a kind of anti-government sentiment, which is partially fueled by kind of tribal populations that don't have as much attention in the mainstream press and often as much ear from legislatures and so on. And it's been coined the largest internal security threat by the Prime Minister of India. Now, what's the real problem? It's often attributed to a breakdown of communication between these very rural populations and kind of decision makers. And often the person who's responsible for kind of these communications are journalists. So let me show you the status of journalism in Chhattisgarh. I'll do this by way of a graph. Here you're seeing in red the number of speakers of various tribal languages. You probably haven't heard of these, languages like Kui, Kuruk, Gondi, millions of speakers. And now I'll show you in blue the number of aggregated news outlets in these languages. This is not a mistake. There's no blue bar because basically you don't find any either print or audiovisual news in any of these languages. There are very few journalists trained in these languages. Actually, if you look at systems like community radio, it's currently not legal in India to broadcast news over community radio. That's also a security concern. So we came and we asked the question, can you use mobile phones that have a very high penetration in these communities, often 60, 70%, to create an alternate network for collecting and disseminating news and grievances that are important for rural communities? And what we created with collaborators is something called CGnet Swara. This is a voice portal for citizen journalism. And the way it works is that anyone in a rural area, in a village, can place an ordinary phone call over interactive voice response to a server. The server is running in my house. And someone logs in, a BBC-trained journalist, Shubhranshu Chowdhury, leads a team of moderators who reviews the reports, does cross-checking, fact-checking, checks them for appropriateness. If he approves the report, it's published both on an internet website, CGnetSwara.org, and is available for listening over the phone again. So the same people can call, listen to other messages that others have recorded. And now there's a team actually that looks at these reports on the website. Journalists, bureaucrats, other people in the media, activists, monitors this site and sees how they can follow up to often evoke change. This has been running for about 3 years. We've had about 2,500 posts. It's moderate levels of traffic. This is relatively modest, but these are all high-quality recordings that are all cross-checked and so on. A lot more people call to listen to reports, about 165,000 total calls so far. I'll just give you a taste in the time I have left with the kind of reports you see on the system. Here's a story from about 2 years ago where there was a tragedy in a rural area due to non-payment of government wages, led to a series of events where a father saw his son die in a hospital. This was the first coverage of this event that otherwise was not getting attention. It was reported on our channel. Soon thereafter, it was picked up by major media outlets around the country, got a lot of attention, and within 2 weeks, this particular farmer was paid overdue wages. Now, once you have a seed event like that, there's a lot more interest. So there's kind of an avalanche of reports with respect to this employment scheme. Since then, there have been dozens of cases like this resolved through our system. Another example is just a few weeks ago, we were looking at, or a few months rather, there was a bore well problem in a rural area, lack of water to the village, couldn't draw ample attention, was raised by an ordinary person calling a phone number, immediately has a global audience with that recording. It's picked up by the international NGO Change.org. They rally 3,000 signatures within 2 weeks, rally a lot of attention on the government there. the bore well is fixed. So there are lots of examples like this on the website. I'd invite you to visit cgnetswara.org. We've done academic studies of this ecosystem, interviewing journalists, interviewing bureaucrats. What are the perceptions? How can we scale this up and replicate this using systems like IVR Junction that we've built to help other people around the world build similar systems? I'll look forward to your questions. Thanks.